It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. Mark Twain. This is an Extar EP9, a pistol caliber carbine made in Arizona, and it retails at nearly half some of its biggest competitors, making it a true underdog. So did 1,000 rounds with this unlikely champion updog our hearts? Well, first let's step back and survey the landscape. Pistol caliber carbines have become increasingly popular in the consumer market over the last decade, with new models popping up faster than I can keep track. From the big name manufacturers like POF, Patriot Ordnance Factory, announcing the Phoenix at SHOT Show 2022, down to some of the lesser known ones like Extar. And while this video isn't a dedicated argument for or against pistol caliber carbines or PCCs as a whole, I do want to establish what they are, where they came from, and why people want them. Because there are very strong feelings in the gun community about their purpose and effectiveness, and that is a gross understatement. Now, will nobody step back after completing their invention and said, "Behold, the very first pistol caliber carbine"? At least, not on record. We do have an idea of what guns paved the way to what we have today. I believe a carbine technically refers to a shorter barreled and compact version of an existing rifle, but is more broadly used to describe most compact-ish rifles with barrels under 20 inches and cartridges lesser than 308 or so. The Extar, for instance, does not have a longer barreled iteration, just the stubby one, and is chambered in 9mm. A submachine gun, or subgun, or SMG, refers to an automatic, magazine-fed carbine that shoots handgun cartridges. Now, there are several different names for this classification, current and historical, such as the British machine carbine, or the German machine pistol or machine pistol, like the MP5, or the PDW, or personal defense weapon. And the Scots, well, they just call it the "get your shite out my way." Now, the PDW and the machine pistol muddy the waters a bit, as a fully automatic handgun like the Beretta 93R share this name, machine pistol. PDWs like the FNP90 or the H&K MP7 fire uniquely developed cartridges not previously seen in handguns or rifles because NATO wanted some alternatives to the 9mm in the 80s. I digress. 1918 saw the emergence of several firearms matching these categories, including the Beretta Model 1918, the German Bergmann MP18, which is arguably the very first of its kind, and the one that coined the name submachine gun, the American Thompson machine gun. Hell yeah! Named after General T. Thompson, it was also called the Tommy gun, which everybody has heard of, the Chicago piano, the Chicago typewriter, or the trench broom. Those Chicago nicknames are kind of funny since they have such strict gun laws, but to be fair, these names derived from the 1920s after the huge success of Prohibition. But there's no guns there anymore, so no worries. More interestingly though is that last name, the trench broom. You see, the submachine gun was developed near the end of World War I and more widely utilized in World War II as a lightweight, quick-firing, close-quarters combat weapon, kind of like what you'd want in a trench or in a police shootout against a bunch of prosthetic-wearing G-men. That must be outside a gun show in Indiana. And although most pistol caliber carbines fire 9mm, the Tommy gun was 45 ACP, which is no beasting by any measure. So you have a lightweight, compact firearm with more compact ammunition to boot. Notice I said more compact ammo, not lighter. This is probably no surprise, but many rifle caliber carbine rounds aren't all that heavy, which is why they're beneficial to larger rifle rounds, because if you can carry more rounds, you can put more down range. This particular Full Metal Jacket 55 grain .223 round, for instance, weighs within a gram of this particular Full Metal Jacket 115 grain 9mm, despite being twice the size. And I'm going to over-clarify that this doesn't go for every bullet around. These particular ones just happen to weigh within a gram. So you've got a little bit of bullet grain here and a little bit of powder and brass here, and they seem to balance out. Another way of looking at this is that each of these Glock Mags has the same capacity as this .223 mag, despite taking up half the size. But then they will be twice the weight, approximately. So it's really up to the job or the operator to decide whether penetration or ballistics or a bunch of stuff that's getting outside of my knowledge or expertise. And I just don't feel comfortable talking about that without sounding like a LARPer. So I'm going to stop there because I've thoroughly and adequately explained the bejesus out of pistol caliber carbines thus far. And yet my ears ringeth over with complaints that they're useless and no more effective than their smaller co-caliber cousins. So here's me shooting a jug with a 9mm full metal jacket and a 223 full metal jacket. As you can see, the jug was damaged by that one and then also by this one. And I don't remember which one was which, but I don't want to be shot by either. And that concludes this segment, Appeasing the Beast. Alas, I'm not making this video for the hateful, but for the interested. I think that's a great... Oh, hey, didn't see you there. You know, we get asked a lot by nobody, how can we help support you? Well, if you look down below, we have some affiliate links, like for instance, Blackout Coffee. They make great coffee out of Florida, delivered straight to your door the way you want it. If you use our link, you get 10% off, and their coffee's really good. So it's not like you're just doing something that doesn't matter. Like, you're gonna be putting good stuff in your body that's gonna wake you up, and you're probably pooping while you watch this video anyway. So if you drink coffee, it's just gonna perpetuate. You're gonna watch more of our content because you're gonna poop more. Also, axle hearing protection. More recently with the Ghost Strikes, which is what I'm wearing right now. These are kind of the second generation of the GS Extreme Pros, and I like them a lot. They're very comfortable. The new foam tips that they include seal better, at least in my ears. There's 3 sizes, so if you're like Josh and you have ear canals the size of a pin, you know, it's like that thing like, oh, it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to go to heaven. Well, for you, it's easier for, I have no idea where I'm going with this. Check out their link for that. The more pairs you buy at once, the bigger the discount you get. So if your shooting group wants to get matching protection and not clam up your ears on hot days and just have more comfort. Also, long battery life and Bluetooth connectivity, 29 decibels of hearing protection. And then more recently, bullets. We've got a partnership with Global Ordnance, who you may not know, they do a lot of ammo, and they have ammo in stock right now. And they also have some nice things like, I like brass 7.62x39 ammo, especially if you're doing like an AR-47. You know, they tend to get dirty less frequently when it's not steel cased, and then, you know, just probably a little bit easier on those soft soy boy ARs. This is coming from somebody who loves AR-47s. Make sure to check them out. And we want to keep making videos like this for you, but also for us, because that's how, yeah. So thanks for watching. Let's get back to the video about the Extar EP9, and yeah. So back to the Extar. It features a 6.5-inch barrel tipped with an upward blasting muzzle device that does a pretty decent job at mitigating muzzle rise. Thread pitch is 1/2 by 28 if you want to mount a suppressor or alternate muzzle device. The handguard is polymer with 2 Picatinny rail mounts and pre-tapped holes for mounting additional ones at 45 degrees. This is not a standard AR handguard or compatible footprint from what I can tell, and replacements are mostly 3D printed from small private operations with a few limited carbon fiber or aluminum ones if you look hard enough. However, I do find this one adequate, especially for how lightweight and cheap it is. It's held in place with 2 screws, and removal exposes a clever clamp point for removing the barrel or the muzzle device. Worth noting, check the screws to keep the bottom Picatinny rail in place ever so often, and make sure they're tight, because these nuts and washers come off, you have to remove the handguard to put them back on. The upper and lower are a glass-filled polymer and are very AR-like both in form and controls. Now, because our timing is impeccable, during the production of this video, Extar actually released the updated version of the EP9, so bear in mind the one you can buy now is a little different than the one we have here. Starting up front is a new muzzle device that Extar calls a blast director, and to me it looks like a typical blast can or linear compensator. The handguard is now a slimmer, less 3D printed looking unit with M-LOK instead of the extra Picatinny rail, and mounting a rail on M-LOK is a breeze, so this is a great move. The new fire control group is all steel, replacing the polymer one, which should add an overall crisper feel. The buffer retainer is also now steel, and out back, the new brace, blade, call it whatever you want, produced in-house by Extar replaces the SB Tactical one. These changes seem to be mostly user feedback driven, or to keep as many parts in-house as possible, so stay tuned and we'll try to get our hands on one at a later date. The safety selector is easy to manipulate, the trigger is crisp and a little lighter than mil-spec. It also has a very generous and open trigger guard. Interestingly enough, the entire factory trigger group is polymer as well, save for the springs and pins, and can be replaced for as little as $30 directly from Extar. The rest of the controls are also very familiar, including the bolt release in conjunction with the last round hold open and an easy to use, side-oriented, non-reciprocating charging handle. It's left side mounted and cannot be changed or configured to the right side. Construction is solid and doesn't give the impression of cheap. I imagine if you line this up with a standard AR lower, they would match up pretty close, but then the ATF would shoot your dog. The takedown pin in the rear is easy to pull, and the front of the lower has a slot rather than a removable pin. It accepts standard AR pistol grips and triggers, though the standard trigger isn't bad, and I actually prefer the angle and the texture of the B5 Systems grip that was included. I did, however, drop in a sporty AR trigger group just to see if any issues arose, and I did have to replace the safety selector with a standard AR safety for it to function properly. It takes Glock Mags, which as you can guess are extremely easy to source, and many gun owners will already possess several. Mine came with one 17-round P-Mag, which is fine, but you'll want to get some larger ones right away. Some magazines do not drop free from the magwell due to overzealous girth, but I found that these SGM tactical mags work perfectly. They're inexpensive. I got these two on sale for $16 a piece at Classic Firearms, and they've been nothing but reliable with no feed issues. Near the back, we have a QD mount, and above that, a composite buffer tube for the recoil system. The included pistol brace is an SB Tactical SOB son of a building block. It has no length of pull adjustment, but I don't mind the length. I've tried to keep this thing pretty stock, with the exception of the drop-in trigger for science. It's a Rave 140 by Rise Armament, and it runs great. Up top, we have a Bushnell Trs-26. These are a fantastic red dot, with sales sometimes dipping below $100. Battery life and build quality are excellent, but it doesn't have shake to wake, so you have to manually turn it on. And I know that's not ideal for home defense, but I do like the size of the objective lens and the brightness. The light is an Inforce WML, which is a smaller version of the WML-X we had in the Bear Creek Arsenal Gen 2 video. I like these a lot. They're very bright and feature-rich, but I have had to move it back so that the upward blasting muzzle device doesn't cook the lens. The sling and the QD mount are from Grove Tech. It's a QS Sentinel, which I've had great luck with so far, and I intend to continue using these. The foregrip I got from a buddy, and I don't know what it is, probably a Wish special, but it's adequate. Without accessories, the Extar only weighs 4.1 pounds, which is less than half the weight of a gallon of milk, or 2,500 times less than a Ford F-350 King Ranch dually. Oh, that's silly, you say. Well, how about 1 octillionth? That's 10 to the 27th power, the weight of Jupiter. Unfortunately, we couldn't fit Jupiter in an F-350 King Ranch dually because we didn't have one on hand for testing purposes, and it sounds like I'm wasting and burning time, and you're probably right. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. Operation is a blowback system, which means the force pushing the bullet down the barrel is responsible for directly sending the bolt rearward, which is Newton's third law, as opposed to something like a direct impingement system that requires a gas block and a tube on the barrel to reroute gas back to the bolt carrier key. It's robust, simple, and leaves very little room for malfunction. The bolt is solid and weighted for blowback operation as opposed to a hollow-ended bolt you would find in a DI or piston AR. It's simple and effective, but will not work with folding stock adapter systems like Law Tactical, as those buffer tube folding adapters require a hollow-ended bolt for the bolt carrier extension. This isn't a deal breaker by any means, but is worth noting if you're looking for a foldable truck or backpack gun. Now, before we get into shooting impressions, a little bit about the company behind the EP9, Extar. Back in 1995, they introduced the first molded polymer rifle caliber receiver sets on the market. Since then, they've done work for major manufacturers, producing components under their respective names. In 2010, they started development on the EXP 556 pistol. When it hit the market in 2013, it was regarded as the lightest 556 pistol you could buy. Extar eventually passed all EXP 556 duties onto New Frontier Armory, but as far as I can tell, there hasn't been much activity on the project lately. Extar passed this on in favor of their next project, the EP9 pistol. In 2018, they launched their new business model, which is a direct-to-consumer model not unlike Palmetto State Armory. We first discovered the EP9 after watching Honest Outlaw's first review of it back in 2018, and it ticked all the right boxes based on his video. Honestly, no pun intended, I should probably stop watching his content because I have bought several guns based on his recommendations, and my wife is going to turn off our internet if it continues. Fortunately, the Extar is no bank breaker, which is surprising based on how it performs, which leads us to shooting impressions. The Extar punches way above its weight, and by weight I mean its price, but also its weight because it's light. You get what I mean, you know, the thing. Okay?
Reload!
It's accurate, reliable, and a total hoot to shoot. The recoil impulse is surprisingly soft and predictable for a blowback gun, and the low weight makes it easy to handle and manipulate. The familiar AR-like controls are easy to pick up and run with, and if the bolt release is too small to manipulate with gloves, you can give the charging handle a little tug and it releases. Yoink! Mag changes are a breeze thanks to its lightweight and standard AR-style mag release, as long as you have drop-free mags. Now, why do they call them drop-free? I mean, wouldn't that mean that they don't drop? Like free of dropping, now with 100% less droppage. When shot back to back with more expensive options like the Streebog or the CZ Scorpion, it can hold its own. You'd never know in a blind test that this was a budget gun. The biggest giveaway that it's a budget gun is the handguard. But it's comfortable, and I like the way it works with this slanted grip. We ran the factory trigger for about 90% of testing, but I did get curious about trigger compatibility after reading some forums saying that not all drop-in triggers worked. The trigger is incredibly light and crisp with very short travel, and it just seems to match the personality of the gun. These triggers can also be had for about $100, which is quite the bargain, and like I said, matches the mantra of the Extar. Now here's the real kicker. Retail price directly from Extar is currently $450, though getting your hands on one is a bit of a work of timing. Orders will open up occasionally and typically sell out in the same day or within an hour. You can sign up for notifications on availability, but there's no backorder system. The Scorpion and the Streebog tip the scales drastically compared to the EP9. Now, where those other guns will excel is aftermarket support. As I stated earlier, the EP9 has very little aftermarket parts aside from what you can mount on accessory rails or triggers and grips that are AR compatible. Now, the Extar eats through just about everything, with the exception being a little bit of aluminum-cased blazer ammo that occasionally blazer aluminum cased ammo, which honestly gave a lot of guns trouble. Now let's talk one last category, who's it for? In my case, other than a range toy, this is my go-to for home defense. And I'm sure that's gonna fall under a lot of criticism, what doesn't in the gun community. In conclusion, I find the Extar EP9 deeply satisfying to shoot and own, and the value presented is almost unmatched by anything we've shot so far. If you have $400 burning a hole in your pocket, you'd be hard-pressed to spend it on anything better, at least for now. Or maybe just a bunch of Bud Light. I'm just kidding, that's piss water. Now, it's not perfect. The bottom accessory rail coming off was a little meh. Buying the gun is kind of a pain, it took me a couple months, and the aftermarket support is lacking. But how much do you want to trick out a $400 gun, really? Well, if you look on Reddit, the answer is a lot. In fact, the Extar has a pretty healthy and almost cultish following. But after my time owning one, I can see why. Now, what are some other guns that share a similar space in terms of value or performance? Or what gun have you found to be most satisfying to own? I'd love to hear about it below. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider liking and subscribing. Check us out on Subscribestar and Patreon. And if you didn't like this video because you hate pistol caliber carbines, support us on Subscribestar and Patreon, and we'll use that money to invest in some big boy calibers. Honestly, I've kind of been wanting to do a 4.58 SOCOM build. We'll see. Thanks for watching, and stay safe out there.
Reload!
Oh! The gun, idiot!